Colonel Sanders. Okay, we're going to be talking about Colonel Sanders. And before I forget, just in case it doesn't mention this in the article, after Colonel Sanders sold the KFC restaurant, he started another restaurant called Colonel's Own, and he was sued by Kentucky Fried Chicken. So just in case it doesn't mention this in the article here. Also, Tennessee Ernie Ford also said that Colonel Sanders, he was on the Tennessee Ernie Ford show back in the 1960s, and he said that Colonel Sanders fought in the Spanish-American War, which is not true. He would have been 8 years old. The Spanish-American War was in 1898. Colonel Sanders was born September 9th, 1890, passed away December 16th, 1980. Was an American businessman and founder of fast food chicken restaurant chain Kentucky Fried Chicken, also known as KFC. He later acted as the company brand's ambassador and symbol. His name and image are still symbols of the company. Sanders held a number of jobs in his early life, such as a steam engine stoker, insurance salesman, and filling station operator. He began selling fried chicken from his roadside restaurant in North Corbin, Kentucky, during the Great Depression. During that time, Sanders developed his secret recipe and his patented method of cooking chicken in a pressure fryer. Sanders recognized the potential of the restaurant franchising concept, and the first KFC restaurant franchise opened in Salt Lake, Utah in 1952. When his original restaurant closed, he devoted himself full-time to franchising his fried chicken throughout the country. The company's rapid expansion across the United States and overseas become overwhelming for Sanders. In 1964, when then 73 years old, he sold the company to a group of investors led by John Y. Brown Jr. and Jack C. Macy for $2 million. It'd be approximately $18.9 million today. However, he retained control of operations in Canada, and he became a salaried brand ambassador for Kentucky Fried Chicken. In his later years, he became highly critical of the food served by KFC restaurants, believing that they had cut costs and allowed quality to deteriorate. And it says life and early career. We're going to be looking over here on the right-hand side as well. We're going to be flipping back and forth. But what we'll do is we'll go back over here to life and career after I go through this on the right-hand side. Born Harland David Sanders. Says what year he was born. We already went through that. He was born in Henryville, Indiana. And he died in Louisville, Kentucky at the age of 90. And the resting place is Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. Education, LaSalle Extension University. Occupations, businessman, restaurateur. Years active, 1930 to 1980. Founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. His spouse was Josephine Keene, married 1909, divorced 1947, and he married Claudia Price, married 1949. He's got 3 children, and he was in the military here, United States Army. Years of service, 1906 and 1907. Rank was a Wagner. Wagner is a teamster of American English and a truck driver, person who drives teams of draft animals, or a member of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, a labor union in place. So it tells a little bit about that. Battles, occupation of Cuba, Cuban pacification medal. Now, of course, it has pictures of him. We'll go through that in a little bit. 1890 to 1906, early life. Harland David Sanders was born 1890, a 4-bedroom house located 3 miles, 5 kilometers east of Henryville, Indiana. He was the oldest of three children born to Wilbur, David, and Margaret Ann Sanders. His mother was an Irish and Dutch descent. The family attended the Advent Christian church. His father was a mild and affectionate man who worked his 80 acres farm until he broke his leg in the fall. He then worked as a butcher in Henryville for 2 years. Sanders' mother was a devout Christian and strict parent, continually warning her children on the evils of alcohol, tobacco, gambling, and whistling on Sundays. Sanders' father died in 1895. His mother got work in a tomato cannery, and the young Harlan was left to look after and cook for his siblings. By the age of 7 in 1897, he was reportedly skilled with bread and vegetables and improving with meat. The children foraged for food while their mother was away at work for days at a time. In 1899, his mother married Edward Park, but according to the 1900 census, his mother was widowed again. When he was 10 in 1900, Sanders began to work as a farmhand. In 1902, Sanders' mother married William Brogadis, and the family moved to Greenwood, Indiana. Remember, he was born in Henryville, Indiana, and then the family moved to Greenwood, Indiana. Sanders had a tumultuous relationship with his stepfather. In 1903, at the age of 12, he dropped out of 7th grade, later stating that algebra's what drove him off, and went to live and work on a nearby farm. At the age of 13, he left home and took a job painting horse carriages in Indianapolis. When he was 14, he moved to southern Indiana to work as a farmhand. 1906 to 1930, various jobs. 1906, with his mother's approval, Sanders left the area to live with his uncle in New Albany, Indiana. His uncle worked for a streetcar company and secured Sanders a job as a conductor. Sanders falsified his date of birth and enlisted in the United States Army in October 1906, age 16. Completing his service commitment as a Wagner, see Teamster says, in Cuba, being awarded the Cuban Pacification Medal for the Army. He was honorably discharged in February 1907 and moved to Sheffield, Alabama, where his uncle lived there. He met his brother Clarence, who had also moved there in order to escape their stepfather. The uncle worked for the Southern Railway and secured Sanders a job there as a blacksmith helper. And in the workshops, after 2 months, Sanders moved to Jasper, Alabama, where he got a job cleaning out the ash pans of trains from the Northern Alabama Railroad, a division of the Southern Railway, when they had finished their runs. Sanders progressed to become a fireman, steam engine stoker, from the age of 16. He worked the job for nearly 3 years until he was fired for insubordination after he got sick. And it says here, Sanders found laboring work with the Norfolk and Western Railway from 1909. While working on the railroad, he met Josephine Keene of Jasper, Alabama, and they were married shortly afterwards on June 15th, 1909 in Jasper. They would go on to have 3 children. Margaret Josephine Sanders, born March 29th, 1910 in Jasper, Alabama, and died on October 19th, 2001 in West Palm Beach, Florida. Harlan David Sanders Jr. on April 23rd, 1912 in Alabama, who died on September 15th, 1932 in Martinsville, Indiana, from infected tonsillitis. And Mildred Mary Sanders Ruggles, born October 15th, 1919 in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and died September 21st, 2010 in Lexington, Kentucky. He then found work as a fireman on the Illinois Central Railroad, and he and his family moved to Jackson, Tennessee, By night, Sanders studied law by correspondence through the LaSalle Extension University. Sanders lost his job at Illinois after brawling with a colleague. While Sanders moved to work for the Rock Island Railroad, Josephine and the children went to live with his parents. After a while, Sanders began to practice law in Little Rock, which he did for 3 years, earning enough in fees for his family to move with him. His legal career ended after a courtroom brawl with his own client destroyed his reputation. This period represented a low point for Sanders. As a biographer, John Ed Pierce wrote, Sanders had encountered repeat failure large through bullheadedness and lack of self-control, impatience, and self-righteous lack of diplomacy. Following the incident, Sanders was forced to move back in with his mother in Henrysville, where he went to work as a laborer on the Pennsylvania Railroad. In 1919, the family moved to Jeffersonville, where Sanders got a job selling life insurance for the Prudential Life Insurance Company. Sanders was eventually fired for insubordination. He moved to Louisville and got a sales job with Mutual Benefit Life of New Jersey. In 1920, at the age of 30, Sanders established a ferry boat company, which operated a boat on the Ohio River between Jeffersonville and Louisville. He canvassed for funding, becoming a minority shareholder himself, and was appointed secretary of the company. The ferry was an instant success. Around 1922, he took a job as secretary of the Chamber of Commerce in Columbus, Indiana. He admitted that he was not very good at the job and resigned less than a year. Sanders cashed in on his ferry boat company shares for $22,000 and used the money to establish a company manufacturing acetylene lamps. The venture failed after Delco introduced an electric lamp that it sold on credit. Sanders moved to Winchester, Kentucky, to work as a salesman for the Michelin Tire Company. He lost his job in 1924 when Michelin closed its New Jersey manufacturing plant. By 1924, by chance, he met the general manager of Standard Oil of Kentucky, who asked him to run a service station in Nicholasville. In 1930, the station closed as a result of the Great Depression. 1930 to 1952, later year. 1930, the Shell Oil Company offered Sanders a service station in North Corbin, Kentucky, rent-free in return for paying the company a percentage of the sales. Sanders began to serve chicken dishes and other meals such as country ham and steaks. Initially, he served the customers in adjunct living quarters before opening the restaurant. It was during this period that Sanders was involved in a shootout with Matt Stewart, a local competitor, over the painting of sign directing traffic to his station. Stewart killed a Shell employee who was with Sanders and was convicted of murder. Eliminating Sanders' competition, Sanders was commissioned as a Kentucky colonel in 1935 by Kentucky Governor Rudy Laffoon. His local popularity grew, and in 1939, food critic Duncan Hines visited Sanders' restaurant and included it as it in Adventures in Good Eating, his guide to restaurants throughout the U.S. The entry reads, Corbin, Kentucky, Sanders Court and Cafe. And it says here, very good place to stop en route to Cumberland Falls and the Great Smokies. Continuous 24-hour service, sizzling steaks, fried chicken, country ham, hot biscuits. And it shows the list right there. In July 1939, Sanders acquired a motel in Asheville, North Carolina. His North Corbin restaurant and motel was destroyed in a fire in November 1939, and Sanders had it rebuilt as a motel with a 140-seat restaurant. By July 1940, age 50, Sanders had finalized his secret recipe for frying chicken in a pressure fryer that cooked the chicken faster than pan frying. As the United States entered World War II in December 1941, gas was rationed, and And as the tourism dried up, Sanders was forced to close his Asheville motel. He went to work as a supervisor in Seattle until the later part of 1942. He later ran cafeterias for the government at an ordnance works in Tennessee, following his job as assistant cafeteria manager in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So he worked in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. He left his mistress, Claudia Letterton Price, as manager of the North Corbin Restaurant and Motel. In 1942, he sold the Asheville business. In 1947, he and Josephine divorced, and Sanders married Claudia in 1949, as he had long desired. Sanders was recommissioned as a Kentucky colonel in 1950 by his friend Governor Lawrence Weatherby. 1952 to 1980, Kentucky Fried Chicken. In 1952, Sanders franchised his secret recipe Kentucky Fried Chicken for the first time to Peter Harmon of Salt Lake, Utah, the operator of one of the city's largest restaurants. In the first year of selling the product, restaurant sales more than tripled, by 75% of the increase coming from sales of fried chicken. For Harmon, the addition of fried chicken was a way of differentiating his restaurant from competitors. In Utah, a product hailing from Kentucky was unique and evoked imagery of Southern hospitality. Don Anderson, a sign painter hired by Harmon, coined the name Kentucky Fried Chicken. After Harmon's success, several other restaurant owners franchised the concept and paid Sanders 4 cents per chicken, equivalent to 0.44 in 2022. Sanders believed that his North Corbin restaurant would remain successful indefinitely. However, he sold it at the age of 65 at the new Interstate 75, reduced customer traffic, left only with his savings and US 105 at month from Social Security, equivalent to 1,147 in 2022. Sanders decided to begin a franchise his chicken concept in earnest and traveling the U.S. looking for suitable restaurants. After closing the North Corbin site, Sanders and Claudia opened a new restaurant and company headquarters in Shelbyville in 1959. Often sleeping in the back of his car, Sanders visited restaurants, offered to cook his chicken, and if workers liked it, negotiated franchising rights. Although such visits required much time, eventually potential franchisors began visiting Sanders. Instead, he ran the company while Claudia mixed and shipped the spices to restaurants. The franchise approach became highly successful. KFC was one of the first fast food chains to expand internationally, opening outlets in Canada and later in UK, Australia, Mexico, and Jamaica by the mid-1960s. Sanders obtained a patent protecting his method of pressure frying chicken in 1962 and trademarked the phrase, "It's finger licking good," in 1963. And it goes on that the company's rapid expansion to more than 600 locations became overwhelming for the age of Sanders. In 1964, then 73 years old, he sold the Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation for $2 million. That's $18.9 million today. To a partnership of Kentucky business headed by John Y. Brown Jr., a 29-year-old lawyer and future governor of Kentucky, and Jack C. Massey, a venture capitalist and entrepreneur. Sanders became a salaried brand ambassador. The initial deal did not include the Canadian operations, which Sanders retained, nor the franchising rights in the UK, Florida, Utah, and Montana, which Sanders had already sold to others. In 1965, Sanders moved to Mississippi, Ontario, a suburb of Toronto, to oversee his Canadian franchise and continued to collect franchises and appearance fees both in Canada and the U.S. Sanders bought and lived in a bungalow at 1337 Melton Drive in Lakeville area of Mississauga. That's what it is. It's not Mississippi. From 1965 until his death in 1980. In September 1970, he and his wife were baptized in the Jordan River. He also befriended Billy Graham and Jerry Falwell. Sanders remained the company's symbol after selling it, traveling 200,000 miles a year on the company's behalf and filming many TV commercials and appearances. He retained much influence over executives and franchises who respected his culinary expertise and feared what the New Yorker described as the force and variety of his swearing when a restaurant or the company varied from what executives describe as the Colonel's chicken. One change the company made was to the gravy, which Sanders had bragged was so good that it'll make you throw away the darn chicken and just eat the gravy, but which the company simplified to reduce the time and cost. As late as 1979, Sanders made surprise visits to KFC restaurants, and if the food disappointed him, he denounced it. He denounced it to the franchise as a GD slop, or pushed it on the floor. In 1973, Sanders sued Houblin at the then parent company of Kentucky Fried Chicken over the alleged misuse of its image in promoting products he had not helped develop. In 1975, Houblin unsuccessfully sued Sanders for libel after he publicly described their gravy as being sludge with a wallpaper taste. Sanders and his wife reopened their Shelbyville restaurant as Claudia Sanders, the Colonel's lady, and this looks like a restaurant. It says right here. It says Claudia's Sanders dinner house, and this look like a restaurant. Claudia Sanders Dinner House, and served KFC style chicken there as part of a full service dinner menu, and talked about expanding the restaurant into a chain. He was sued by the company for it, and after reaching a settlement with Houblin, he sold the Colonel's Lady restaurant, and it has continued to operate currently as a Claudia Sanders Dinner House. It serves his original recipe, fried chicken, as part of the non-fast food dinner menu, and it is the only non-KFC restaurant that serves an authorized version of the fried chicken recipe. Also, I've heard another restaurant. I'm gonna try to add this to this video about another restaurant that's connected to the Colonel Sanders that has the original recipe, and I'm gonna talk about that here in a couple minutes. Sanders remained critical of Kentucky Fried Chicken's food in an article published by Louisville Courier Journal on October 8th, 1975. He told journalist Dan Kaufman, "My God, that gravy is horrible. They buy tap water for 15 to 20 cents a 1,000 gallons, and then mix it up with flour and starch, and end up with pure wallpaper paste. And I know wallpaper paste, my God, because I've seen my mother make it. There's no nutrition in it, and they ought not to be allowed to sell it. The crispy fried chicken recipe is nothing in the world but a damn fried dough ball stuck on some chicken." Okay, and I remember what the restaurant is that I heard uses the original recipe. It's called Lee's Famous Chicken. You need to check it out. Public image and personality. After being recommissioned as Kentucky Colonel in 1950 by Governor Lawrence Weatherby, Sanders began to dress the part, growing a goatee and wearing a black frock coat. Later switching to a white suit, a string tie, and referring to himself as a colonel. His associates went along with the title change, jokingly at first, and then in earnest, according to a biographer, Josh Oskey. He never wore anything else in public during last 20 years of his life, using a heavy wool suit in the winter and a light cotton suit in the summer. He bleached his mustache and goatee to match his white hair. John Y. Brown Jr. remembers Sanders as a brilliant man with a gourmet flair for food, a visionary, and a great motivator with the style of showman and the discipline of Vince Lombardi. It says here, Sanders was a Freemason. Sanders was diagnosed with acute leukemia in June 1980. He died in Louisville Jewish Hospital of pneumonia 6 months later on December 16th at the age of 90. Sanders had remained active until the month before his death, appearing in his white suit to crowds. His body was laid in state in the rotunda of the Kentucky State Capitol in Frankfort after a funeral service at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary Chapel, which was attended by more than 500 people. His body was also displayed in an open casket during a memorial service that was held at KFC headquarters in Louisville. About 1,200 people attended the service. Sanders was buried in his charismatic white suit and black Western string tie in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville. His wife Claudia died on December 31st, 1996 at the age of 94. By the time of Sanders' death, there were an estimated 6,000 KFC outlets in 45 countries worldwide, with 2 billion in sales annually. And we're going to go ahead and read this. Fictionalized Colonel Sanders have repeatedly appeared as a mascot in KFC's advertisement. Brandon Sanders has been voiced by impressionists and radio ads from 1998 to 2001. An animated version of him, voiced by Randy Quaid, appeared in television commercials. And May 2015, KFC brought the Colonel Sanders character back in new commercials, played by comedian Darrell Hammond. Some commentators felt the new portrayal was distasteful and disrespectful of the actual man's legacy. In August 2015, KFC launched a new campaign, this time with comedian Norm Macdonald portraying Sanders. The first ad of the campaign makes direct reference to Hammond's campaign with a brief piece of footage of Hammond's, followed by Macdonald's Colonel declaring his predecessor as an imposter. In February 2016, George Hamilton was playing Colonel Sanders, portraying his famous tan intro in an advertisement for KFC's Extra Crispy Chicken. During the airing of the 2016 SummerSlam, a commercial for WWE, wrestler Dolph Ziggler dressed up as Colonel Sanders, beating up a man in a chicken suit played by a fellow wrestler, The Miz, in a wrestling ring. In September 2016, comedian Rob Riggle played Sanders in an ad introducing a football team named the Kentucky Buckets. In January 2017, advertising the Georgia Gold Honey Mustard Barbecue Chicken offerings, actor Billy Zane took over the role as the Solid Gold Colonel. I didn't realize he's the one that. I remember him. I didn't realize he was the one that was playing it. In April 2017, actor Rob Lowe was announced as the newest actor in the role of Colonel Sanders. Lowe said that as a child he actually got to meet Harlan Sanders. WWE would return to using Colonel Sanders during 2017 show, adding Shawn Michaels. Kurt Angle played him, as well as announcing Colonel Sanders would be available as a playable character in the WWE. Ray Liotta then played Colonel Sanders Sr. Reba McEntire, who was named as the newest Sanders in January 2016. I mean, they got out of control. August 2018, actor Jason Alexander and professional strongman actor Harper Julius both portrayed Colonel Sanders. And in early 2019, Peter Weller portrayed RoboCop version of Colonel Sanders. Later that year, Sean Austin played Rudy Schur version of the Colonel. To commemorate the beginning of the NFL season 2019, a free video game was commissioned on the restaurant chain KFC and released for free called I Love You, Colonel Sanders, a parody of conventional dating sims with primary objective of the player to develop a romantic relationship with a fictionalized version of KFC's founder, Colonel Sanders, portrayed as an attractive classmate as a cook in school. In December 2020, a fictionalized Colonel Sanders was portrayed by Mario Lopez in the 2020 short film A Recipe for Seduction. Beyond KFC, the Japanese Nippon Professional Baseball League developed an urban legend of the curse of the Colonel. A statue of Colonel Sanders was thrown into a river and lost during a 1985 fan celebration. According to legend, the curse had caused the Japanese Hanshin Tigers to perform poorly since the incident. It was said that unless the statue was fully recovered, the Tigers would never win the Japanese series again. After a handful of losses in 2003, 2005, and 2014, Hanshin finally prevailed in 2023. Characters based on Colonel Sanders have appeared in popular fiction. The Colonel appears as a character with the DC Comics multiverse in 3 promotional issues with titles parodies other DC comic titles. The Colonel of the Two Worlds is a parody of Flash in Two Worlds. The Colonel's Corpse, the Crisis of Infinite Colonels, a parody of the Crisis of Infinite Earths and across the universe, teaming up with characters such as the Green Lantern, the Flash, and alternate versions of himself, such as the female version and Teen Titans Go's version and Chicken version, and to battle villains such as Anti-Colonel of Earth 3, Colonel Grodd, Colonel version of Gorilla Grodd, and LaFreeze. The writer of the comics, Tony the Bid, said, "It's been an honor, the privilege in playing, just plain fun working on the 2 KFC comics. I'm super excited. The story is a trilogy now, and the Colonel planet hopping across the DC universe as a former Green Lantern writer. It's great to revisit Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps in 2018 episode of soap opera General Hospital. Sanders is shown to know Mount Bridge, which he used to disarm a bomb intended to compel him to reveal his secret recipe." I mean, this is, to me, nothing's sacred. They just won't. They don't have respect for Colonel Sanders, in my opinion. They just went overboard, in my opinion. In the novel Kafluki on the Shore, I believe that's what it is, by Hanuki Hahara, whatever it is, Colonel Sanders appeared when an abstract concept takes on the appearance of a famous capitalist icon. In 2017, KFC released a 96-page romance novel, Tender Wings of Desire, in time for Mother's Day, set in Victorian England. It's centers on lazy Madeline Parker, who must choose between a life of order and a man of passion. A feature in Sanders as a love interest and Astinesty, the writer. It was made available as a free download via Amazon. One of Colonel Sanders' white suits with its black clip-on bow tie was sold at auction at $21,510 for Heritage Auction on June 22nd, 2013. The suit has been given to Cincinnati resident Mike Morse by Sanders, who was close to the Morse family. The Morse family house was purchased by Colonel Sanders, and the Sanders lived with the family for 6 months. The suit was purchased by Kentucky Fried Chicken of Japan President, whatever his name, put on the famous suit after placing the winning bid at the auction event in Dallas, Texas. 2011, a manuscript of the book on cooking that Sanders apparently wrote in the mid-1960s was found in KFC archives. It included some cooking recipes from Sanders, as well as anecdotes and life lessons. The KFC said it was planning to try some of the recipes and to publish a 200-page manuscript online. In 2010, the Oscar-winning animated short Lagora prominently featured a rotoscoped depiction of Colonel Sanders during the early fast food restaurant scenes. And then it finishes up charitable giving. Before his death, Sanders used his stock holdings to create the Colonel Harlan Sanders Charitable Organization, a registered Canadian charity. The wing of the Mississauga Hospital for Women and Children's Care is named the Colonel Harlan Sanders Family Care Center in honor of his substantial donation. Sanders Foundation has also made sizable donations to other Canadian children's hospitals, including the McMaster Children's Hospital, IWK Healthline Center, Stroller Children's Hospital, the Toronto-based foundation, and disbursed $500,000 to other Canadian charities in 2016, according to its tax return filed with the Canadian Revenue Agency. So that's Colonel Sanders. This right here is his picture right here. Sanders and his wife grave at Kentucky. Look at that. And here's his grave site right here. And this is the world's first KFC restaurant. There's been other people that highlighted this. This is in Utah. Right here. Sanders in 1914. This is Colonel Sanders with his mother. He's 7 years old. This is an 1897 picture. And this is the information right here. And this is a picture of Colonel Sanders in 1974. So we went through it. Everybody knows who Colonel Sanders is. He's an icon, famous. He's an icon in the restaurant business. I mean, he's bigger than life. Colonel Sanders.